All right. Buddy man, Joey Medina, thank you very much for coming out to the boxingbar.com and welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me, brother.
And it's an honor to have you, Joey. And I know you're doing the whole tour with the Latino Kings of Comedy at the moment. Last year, I went to Oroville to watch Rob Schneider do a performance, and everything seemed back to normal as far as the comedy scene from all the COVID and all the stuff. How do you see comedy right now and the tours and the crowds and everything? Is everything pretty much back to normal?
Well, as far as COVID, I think things are getting back to normal. As far as the culture, I think things have changed a little bit. You know what I mean? Now people being canceled, people being slapped on stage. There's those kind of things that are happening. But, it is what it is, and it's I think it'll get back to normal in that respect as well.
And trust me, I have actually some questions about all that stuff, and I'm glad you brought that up. Let's get to know you a little bit. Every time I see something on your clothing, I always see the Bronx. Is that where you were born?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the Bronx. The name of my production company is Bronx Boy. So it's funny. I left the Bronx when I was 19 years old, but it's still in me. And the older I get, the more I remember and the more I am, grateful to being in that position or, growing up in the Bronx. I think I grew up without a father as a child. And I think the environment growing up in the Bronx was my surrogate father. You know what I mean?
I get it. But, in boxing, a lot of fighters that come into the game, especially the ones that make it big and do good, a lot of them, they come from broken homes. They come from the streets. They have hard backgrounds, and that's what makes them hard and do what they got to do. Is that kind of where everything started for you as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I grew up without a dad, so when I started boxing at I think 12 or 13, it became my father, and it kind of just kept me in a good path. You know what I mean? So when you're a boxer, you're not part of a team, so you're not hanging out with other guys. You're solo, and so I'm not doing drugs. I'm not out there smoking weed or drinking or anything. I'm trying to box, trying to be the best I can. And so it really became, I didn't know it at the time, but it became my father, right? Kind of boxing raised me in many respects.
And how was it that you ran into the sport? Well, how did you get into the gym for the first time, or how did you find boxing, or how did boxing find you?
Well, boxing has always been, I guess, growing up as a kid as a fantasy. I would rent a boxing book, not rent, but I would check out a boxing book from the library all the time, and I would bring it back and then see it again. I would look at the pictures, and I would try to learn boxing from the pictures. And at one point, I remember I had a pair of black ice skates, and I tried to take the blades off so I could use the boot part as a boxing shoes, and that didn't work well. But but I always wanted to box. I always, it was just a fantasy in my mind. And then one day I was in junior high school, and I saw this kid. I was in seventh grade, and I saw this kid with a shirt that said Morris Park Boxing Club, and I was like, oh my god, that's a real boxing club. I went up to him like, where is that? And he told me where it was, and I found it, and I guess it was a Sunday. So when I got there, it was closed, but they had the front door had a mail slot, right? So I opened up the little mail slot, and I'm looking through the mail slot. I'm looking at the inside, and this first time in my entire life I ever saw boxing bag, hitting, heavy bags, and I saw a ring, and I saw a speed bag, and I could smell the sweat and leather. And I fell in love. It was love at first sight. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta be there. So the next day, that Monday, I went to the gym, and the owner of the gym was like, well, it's $5 to join, $5 a month. And I had no money. So he knew that. And he's like, okay, I'll let you clean up. You clean up, that's you're paying your dues. I'm like, okay, good. So I did that. And then, I started boxing ever since then.
You brought up some of the things that might have attracted you there, just watching and hearing the bags and all that stuff. When you got in there and let's say you sparred for the first time, or how do you think you did? You think you were pretty much a natural, or did you have to like really work at it to get good?
No, I think I was actually horrible, and I had to work at it. But it was my first amateur fight ever was 11 days after I started. So whoever was the adults in charge probably did a bad job to let me, box 11 days into going to the gym. And I got my butt kicked. had a bloody nose, and my whole family was there, and they were cheering for me, and I got beat up, and didn't like that. But the good thing is it built character, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna win fights, and I started doing that, and I started winning, and I'm the kind of person that if I get knocked down, I learn, I find out why, and I try to avoid it again, and I try to do a better job next time.
I know me being a Mexican American, first generation. I was born in '75, and growing up, being Mexican American, like I said, we our biggest things was lucha libre and boxing here in Southern California, and I remember fighters like Pepino Cuevas and Lupe Pintor and Salvador Sanchez and all them. And I'm sure you being on the opposite from the opposite side of town, New York, and being Puerto Rican, I'm sure you had all the greats you looked up to. Who were some of the fighters you remember looking up to or wanting to mimic or be like?
Well, as probably almost every other kid, Muhammad Ali was a hero of mine. As a matter of fact, in my entire life, I've only asked for one autograph, and that autograph was Muhammad Ali's. That's the only autograph I've ever asked for. To me, he was like a living legend, a living god, right? But as a Puerto Rican kid, like Wilfredo Gomez, Wilfredo Benitez, but I like people who weren't Puerto Rican. I love Salvador Sanchez was beautiful. Little Red Danny Lopez, who I know now as an adult, I know him, and he's one of the greatest fighters. I remember watching him as a kid. He had so much guts, and so he was so tough. And Roberto Duran, Muhammad Ali. I mean, Hagler, Leonard. All these guys were my heroes growing up as a kid. Kids nowadays they're into Spider-Man and the Hulk and Thor. Growing up a kid, my heroes were boxers. Professional boxers. Those who were the people that I looked up to and who I admired.
You fought out of, I remember looking at your record, and I remember seeing that you fought out of like Tucson, Arizona. Did you move to Tucson or did you go there just for boxing or how did that happen?
Yeah, when I was 19 years old, I met an uncle who I never knew. His name was Carlos Rodriguez, who was a professional bodybuilder. Matter of fact, he was Mr. Universe at one point. It was 1980. He was Mr. Universe. And he came to visit us for the first time, and he was telling me about Arizona. He was telling me he had a friend who was a coach. He had a friend who was a promoter, boxing promoter, and a boxing trainer. And I was like, he was telling me the weather's always nice. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I was 19 years old, had nothing to lose. I'm like, let's go for it. I want to move over there and I want to become a pro. And that's what happened. I moved 2 months later, I think it was, or maybe 2 weeks later. I just packed up a couple of luggages and I moved to Arizona and I turned pro shortly after.
Every boxer remembers their pro debut and being there in the locker rooms behind the drapes there for the first time. What was it like for you the first time being back there and knowing you had to come out here and make your pro debut at this very hard sport? What was it like for you going up there for your pro debut?
My pro debut, I remember the night before, I didn't sleep at all. I was all nerves. It was like a wedding night, right? But it was just, I could not sleep. The next day, I was so tense that I had to get a massage to like loosen my body up because I was so tense. And and my first fight, which was a 6-round fight, was actually a main event fight. It was a main event of the night, and so it was a lot of pressure. And I did well. I think I stopped the guy in the 5th round or something like that. Fourth, I think at the end of the 4th or the end of the 5th round, I stopped him. So I didn't have a lot of knockouts as an amateur. I had a few, but not a lot. So to win my first professional fight with a knockout was a huge thing for me, and I was so happy. Like I was really, really happy.
After your pro debut, did you kind of like question it and say, I don't know if this is for me? What were your feelings after your pro debut? Even though you won and got your KO, sometimes there's people that kind of got to think about it. But what was it like for you?
No, it was great. I knew this was it. This is what I wanted to do. I called everybody I knew to tell them how excited I was that I won. And, I thought this was great. I go, I'm undefeated. It was 1-0. I was undefeated. I was like, I love it. It felt good. No, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I always knew what I wanted to be a fighter, and I always knew that I wanted to box. And it's even though I look back now and it seems far away from my current life, but it's when I'm talking about it now with you, right? It feels like it was just yesterday. So it I love it, and people don't understand what it is to be a fighter unless they fight. It's here we are as a fighter. We're gladiators, man. We're going in a ring and we're fighting. We literally are drawing blood from the other person, trying to hurt the other person physically. But there's no real malice. It's all love and sport. And when the bell rings, we hug the guy and we're like, all right, hey man, good fight. Move on, right? And so it's a beautiful thing. Boxing truly is a beautiful art form. And I think, and I respect all sports, but I think boxing, out of many sports, is truly an art form. And I have nothing but respect and love for the sport and for anybody who gives it a shot.
Today we have like a different mentality in boxing. I think because of guys like Mayweather, they go on undefeated. Everybody wants to stay undefeated. That's why the best don't fight the best. Back in the day, some of the greats, Salvador Sanchez and Alexis Arguello, Bernard Hopkins, all these guys, they lost early fights, and they came back and bounced back. You suffered an early loss there after a few fights there. What was your mentality like after your first loss?
Okay, there's a few things to that. So I was undefeated, I think, for 8-0. I think it was 8-0 undefeated before I lost my first fight, which was probably, I think, my ninth fight. And I remember after every fight I would win, and everyone and their mother would be in my dressing room taking pictures, getting autographs, wishing me, telling me congratulations, all that stuff. And then I remember losing my very first fight I lost, and walking into the dressing room, turning around, and nobody was there. Nobody. And I remember at first my heart sunk, but I quickly lifted up and I smiled to myself and I said, okay, I get it. People love a winner. People want to hang out with the winner. And I never forgot that lesson, ever, ever, ever. And I was okay with it. And then I continued to do what I would do after every fight. I would call my mom and, I called her and she answered the phone. She's like, hey, did you win? I'm like, no, I lost. She goes, that's okay. I go, yeah, you're right, Mom. That's okay. And that was it. And I felt better, but the thing was, that was personally. But now professionally, I remember thinking to myself, I should have won that fight. I could have won that fight. And I ended up going to a hypnotist after that fight. And I remember just wanting the killer instinct. And I remember talking to this, hypnotist saying, man, I want you to, turn me into like a killing machine or whatever. And I remember my very next fight, I knocked the guy out. I think it was in the first or second round. I cut him. I dropped him a few times. And I just went out I went out crazy. And I just tried to kill this kid, and not literally, but, I tried to knock him out fast. And I did. I knocked him out, I think, in the first. I think I knocked him down twice in the first round. And I think maybe the second round, I knocked him out. I think it was. Can't remember. But a couple of things happen, right, when someone fails. Not just a sport, anything in life. Either it makes you better or it destroys you, right? Or it just crumbles you. And that's the difference with people. And with me, I think it made me better. I knew I'm like, okay, I'm not undefeated anymore. I can lose. And I just had a different mentality.
And you did lose by split decision, meaning that there was a judge on your side. So you could have lost by a lot either.
Yeah, well, I fought in the guy's hometown. I remember that, and that didn't help. But it is what it is. Boxing is, sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes when it goes your way, maybe you were lucky, and other times when it doesn't go your way, you were robbed, and it happens in boxing. And sometimes when it's close, it is what it is, and it depends on people's perspective, right?
Very true. Going up as you go up in the ranks and you get better at this craft. You fight Nicky Perez for the first time, lose in Tucson the first time, and on the second time, after a couple of fights, you fight him again, and this time it's for the NABF Super Featherweight title. What was that like? I mean, Nicky Perez, how everybody knows him. He was no slouch. He fought Salvador Sanchez, he fought Julio Cesar Chavez, he fought Juan Laporte, even Calvin Lampkin, who was a really good fighter in his own right. What was it like fighting Nicky Perez there the second time in Tucson for the title?
Well, it was great. Nicky Perez was always a great fighter. Now, the first time I fought him, I had over 100-degree fever. I think I was like 103-degree fever the day of the fight. And it was a main event. And I went along with the fight, and I probably shouldn't have. I lost a decision. And then a couple of fights later, we're fighting, him and I were fighting for the vacant NABF Super Featherweight title. And this time I knew I was going to beat him. I said I was going to fight a different fight. I was going to be in the best shape ever. I went to New York to train with my original trainer, and I lost so much weight. I came in, I think I weighed in like at 128 and a half. I think I was probably 14 when I weighed that amount. I just felt great. And in the third round, I hit him with a left hook and I cut his eye. He had a pretty bad cut. I felt he wasn't laying a glove on me the whole fight because I was fighting him in a different fight. And then, and I think it was in the third or fourth round, I believe, we accidentally butt heads. I don't think he did it on purpose, but we actually butt heads, but he cut my eyelid. My eyelid, I needed 18 stitches after that. So the referee stops the fight and decided to go to the scorecards. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't want to win the fight this way, but I'll take it. I'll take the win. It's still a win. And then he won a majority decision, and I just couldn't believe it. Even the paper, the newspaper the next day, the news, they were like, hey, we didn't see it that way, but, he won the majority decision. And, it is what it is. It's boxing, man. So I lost a lot in my heart when I lost that fight because I really thought I won. I don't mind losing, but I felt like I worked my ass off, and then I left my job after working 8 long weeks, and then someone just robbed me and took my check. I was like, it's just not fair. Like, I earned that check. You know what I mean? And I don't mind losing. I don't mind losing. I'm not a sore loser. I lose. But I didn't think I lost that fight. And I don't think anyone else thought I lost that fight except for the 3 judges. So, it is what it is.
For the very next fight, a lot of times fighters, after a loss, they get a few fights that are like confidence boosters and they throw some easy fights at them thereafter. But you fought a guy that was 24-0, undefeated on your very next fight, Jacobson, there in Las Vegas, and you lose for the first time by knockout. What happened there in that fight?
Well, it wasn't really a knockout, but I'll explain it. Okay, so what happened with that fight was, before that fight, I was training with Greg Haugen, and Greg Haugen in Vegas, and I was training for that fight with Jacobson, and he was training for a rematch with Penzianza, which he won. It was a great, great experience for me. It was, I know he did well with it because he won the fight. But 2 weeks before my fight, they canceled it. I was fighting in the Caesar's Palace, and they canceled the fight. And I was like, okay. So my training with Greg Haugen was over. So I went home and I ate, I ate ice cream. I relaxed. I just chilled out. I think the fight was either Friday or Saturday or something like that. And then they called me Tuesday saying the fight was on. And by then, my managers and trainers were kind of just more of my employees than anything else. And so we weren't really connected strong. So I didn't have anyone to tell me, don't fight because you're not in shape anymore. You just got out of shape for 2 weeks, And so I said yes to the fight, of course. The next day I went to the gym. I got on the scale. I was 11 pounds overweight. And I was like, oh, shit. All right, here we go. So all I did for the next 3 or 4 days is just dehydrate myself. I didn't drink any water. I didn't eat. I didn't do anything other than just train and try to lose the weight. So we get to the weigh-in, and we were the semi-main event to a George Foreman card. George Foreman was fighting. And I forgot who he fought. I forgot the name, but he fought the Italian champion, the heavyweight Italian champion, which he knocked out really quick. So anyway, out of every fight I've ever had professionally, I still was overweight. It was the first time ever I didn't make the weight. So, and then the night before, I'm checking in and I faint because I'm so dehydrated. I faint at the hotel checking in. So I get up and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I just fell, but I really fainted. That's what happened. And then, so the next day I'm still overweight. So I go in the bathroom and I put on plastic and I jump rope and I finally make the weight. So I make the weight and I'm just so tired and so dehydrated. So I go into the fight, and this guy is actually easier than I thought. He just stood there. He was tall and lanky and stood there, and he was perfect for my style. I was just pop shotting the guy the entire night. The second or third round, I think maybe the first round, I cut his eye. Then I think in the third round, I drop him. I hit him with the right hand. I'm leaning against the ropes. He comes towards me. I hit him with the right hand. I drop him. And I'm literally thinking, oh my God, I'm going to win this fight. And he was ranked 7th in the world at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to knock this guy out. I'm going to win. But I remember not feeling great, right? And then all of a sudden, man, at the next round, I was just like, I couldn't breathe. I was trying to catch my breath. I was like, and I was just not there anymore. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I didn't have it anymore. And then I took my knee just to get just some air. And I took my knee. I took my knee twice because I didn't want to go down the second time. He wasn't hitting me. He wasn't hurting me at all. And I went back in the corner. I said, I can't come out. I can't breathe. I'm done. And that was it. And that's what happened. But it was funny because I wish he was beating me up because then I would feel better. You know what I mean? I'm going to be like, okay, I had to do what I had to do. But I couldn't do it. I just had nothing left. I had nothing left.
And for those that don't know who Greg Haugen is was a terrific fighter in his own right. Do you think it made a big difference that you did fight a very talented guy or you trained with Greg Haugen? He's actually the first guy that beat Hector Camacho.
Yeah, Greg Haugen I loved training with Greg. And even though I was fighting Gerpo Jacobson, his style was very different than his, right? But my style was similar to Pantienza. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I was training with him. But I learned a lot, and I did well against him. And I remember one day sparring, I had the better of him. I remember blooding his nose, and I remember his trainer stopping it, going, okay, that's it. He stopped the workout early, the sparring early, because I was having the better of Greg, and I felt good about that. And I think, and I guarantee that if they didn't call me to cancel my fight before and they would have just let it happen, I would have knocked out Gerpo Jacobson without a doubt. He literally was probably one of the easiest fighters I ever fought as far as styles. He just literally stood there, and he was easy to hit, and he was easy to avoid getting hit by. But you got to have endurance and you got to have stamina. If you don't have stamina, you can lose against a grandmother. So and that's kind of what happened. I dropped him, I cut him. He never hurt me at all. And, it was just, it's one of those things. And that's when I was just like, my heart's not in this anymore. I'm not feeling this anymore. So there was a lot of things. I think mentally I wasn't there for that fight. And I think physically I 100% wasn't there for that fight.
You take about a year and a half off before your next fight 2 fights, and then you don't fight for about 5 years. What was that 5-year layoff there? What was the reason for that?
A lot of stuff. Homelessness for a little bit, not knowing what I wanted to do anymore. My heart wasn't in boxing anymore, even though I loved it. And then when I came back, when I fought again, the reason I did that was I was overweight, I was depressed. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, he asked me, he goes, when were you happiest? I said, well, I was happiest when I was fighting. He goes, well, that's it, fight again. And I thought that, I'm like, okay. So I remember going to the gym just to see what it felt like again. I didn't box. I didn't train. I just went to the gym just to watch. And I remember leaning on the ropes. I was looking, leaning in the ring, watching the guys spar. And some older trainer that I remember, he looked at me and goes, hey, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm just thinking maybe I may fight again. And he looked at me and he chuckled and he laughed. And I said, I may fight again. And that pissed me the hell off. I was like, screw that. So the next day, I sold my car and I took the money and I bought a plane ticket and I called my trainer, my amateur trainer. And I said, Joe, I want to fight again. But I want to focus 100% and I don't want anything to distract me. I want to stay with you and live with you for a couple of months and train. He's like, okay. And that's what happened. And then, I went to South, and even though, I lost, right? It didn't matter to me because I lost all that weight. I was in great shape. Mentally, I was so much better. And it didn't matter to me that I lost a fight because I won life. You know what I mean? And I think that was that was more important to me. And that was something I needed because I was going through a big depression, and by fighting again and going in the ring, although I lost, it didn't matter to me because I looked great, I felt great, and I was probably in the best shape I ever was in my life.
In that little return, you only had those two fights, and then you never fought again. Thereafter, right after you stopped fighting, what was the plan? Did you go, like you said, back into homelessness? Did you have a long period of not doing anything? Did you go to, working regular jobs? What happened thereafter?
Well, my first fight coming back, I was really off because I didn't, even though I was in great shape, I didn't have a lot of sparring. I didn't, I was a little off, but I still felt good about being in shape. Then my very next fight after that, I was fighting, was my last fight. I fought the Philadelphia lightweight champion, and I was fighting him in his backyard with, I think his aunt, I forgot who it was one of the judges. And I fought him for 12 rounds. I cut his eye, and I literally beat this guy probably 8 out of the 10 rounds, guaranteed. And it was an easy fight for me. Like, I was in really good shape. It was an easy fight. And they gave him a decision, and I didn't even care. Like, I really didn't even care. I was happy. I was like, I'm feeling great. Like, he was all beat up after the fight. I was fine. I didn't have the mark on me. You know what I mean? And just then I started dabbling in comedy, doing open mics and stuff. So I was, during the press conference, I was making everybody laugh, and I was making the referee laugh when he was giving us instructions. So it was almost kind of like I knew I was going to become a comedian after that, and I was just doing that kind of as my farewell song, and I was happy with it. Although I lost, I'd rather have lost that way where I felt great and I know I won than win a fight knowing I really lost. So that was great losing that way because I did great. And I know I got ripped off. I totally got ripped off. But after that, I was fine. I was like, okay, I'm good. I started really focusing on comedy after that. And that was it. So I transitioned over. I went to something, the only thing that I know that's tougher than boxing is stand-up comedy. So there you go.
When you're up there doing the open comedy or that open mic stuff at first, what was it like for you? Was it similar? Was it the similar butterflies that you had when you went up there for the first few times in boxing?
That's a great question because it's I say this a lot. It was exactly the same. Boxing and comedy are so similar. It's crazy. It's very similar. The mental aspect of it, the momentum, the you versus them. Is it for a boxer? It's you versus your opponent. As a comedian, it's you versus the audience. You have to change your momentum. You got to pace. You got to sometimes with jokes. You're jabbing with jokes, and then you hit him with the harder shot. You do that with jokes, but it's very similar. And I think one of the reasons why I did well in comedy is because I saw the similarities and I saw how boxing and comedy were the same. And since I already had experience as a boxer, I used the same strategy and I used the same mentality in my comedy. So I think it's one of the reasons why I moved up. So although I was new in comedy, I wasn't new in the world of how to deal with comedy. Do you know what I mean?
Who were some of your first mentors, the guys that saw you when you were coming up and helped you out and tutored you, like to how to do this and this new thing that you're doing? Who were some of the first big guys that try to help you out there that you remember?
Well, a lot of same way in boxing, a lot of the help came from me just observing, from watching more experienced comedians. Right, when I boxed, I watched. As an amateur, I would stay in the gym and I waited till all the pros came, and I would stay there and I would watch them train and I would spar with them and I would learn from them and I would see the difference. I would say, oh, these guys, there's so much different from the amateur boxers. These guys are polished. These guys are making moves that amateurs don't make. And I did the exact same thing with comedy. I would stay and I would do open mics and I would hang out and talk to amateurs, but I would watch the professionals do their sets, and I would watch the professionals, and I would notice the difference again. I would say, these guys are completely different. They're so much polished. They're so much better than amateur comics, right? So, and I would ask them questions. I would hang out with them. I would try to be I was a pest. I was trying to get as much information I could from them. And that's one of the reasons why to this day I would always help a newer comic, if they ask. A lot of them are very cocky, don't ask, and that's fine. That's up to them. But when they ask, I'm there 100% because I remember how I was in that same boat, and I remember how I wanted the help, and I remember there are times where I asked and I reached out for help from comedians, and they didn't give me the time of day, and it hurt my heart. I was like, I'm just trying to learn, man. Please help me out, And so I've never forgotten that. And anytime I see a comic who's hungry the way I used to be, and when I first started, and wants to learn and wants advice, I'm 100% on their side because I want them to succeed. There's room for everybody. And, it doesn't matter if you're an athlete or you're an entertainer, there's room for everybody. We're all individuals, we're all different, and there's nobody like me and there's nobody like that person or this person, or, we're all individuals, and there's going to be people that love me and there's going to be people that don't like me, and there's going to be people that like someone else better than me, and there's going to be people that like me better than them. So it's not even an issue, really. It is what it is. And, but, meeting, to answer your question more directly, when I worked with Paul Rodriguez and I met Paul Rodriguez the very first time was, I was in awe, and I remember one time during my homeless period when I was living in my car, I remember borrowing $12.50. And I remember buying a ticket to watch Paul Rodriguez perform in the theater. Now, I've never, ever seen a comedy show in a theater. And I don't even think I've ever seen a concert in the theater, right? This is beautiful, 2-tier theater and, 1,500 seats, 2,000 seats, which to me might as well have been, stadium. And I'm watching Paul Rodriguez perform there, and I'm sitting literally in the very last seat in the back. And I remember telling myself, I go, one day I'm going to open for him, and one day I'm going to perform on this stage. I remember telling myself both those things. And literally 4 years later, I opened for him on that stage. And, I was like, holy cow, man. And I picked that. It's like literally saying I'm going to win the lottery one day, and one day you do, and it's like, whoa, I didn't know that was for real, So, so that alone showed me I can do anything I put my mind to it as long as I put my mind to it and I work hard at it. So that was probably the biggest lesson I learned, or the biggest influence I had. And I've met so many other wonderful people, and I've traveled around the world with a lot of great comics, and I've hung out with a lot of great comics. I'm friends with a lot of great comics. And all I can do is try to be that person for someone else. Every day I get emails or I'll get direct messages on Instagram or Facebook from people going, hey, I'm a big fan. I just want to say this or say that. And I answer each and every one of them, and because I get it. I'm the same guy as they are. I've just been doing it longer, and I've had more experiences and I've had, more accomplishments, but I'm the same person as them. There's no difference. I'm just wiser because I've been in the game longer. That's the only difference.
I asked you earlier who were some of the boxers that you looked up to. Who were some of the comedians that you looked up to?
Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Red Fox, Freddie Prinze, Paul Rodriguez. Those were all people who were superstars at the time or legends at the time, and who I, admired. I always, and this is the advice I give people, if you're going to admire somebody, admire great people. Don't admire mediocre people, because then that's as far as you're going to go. Always admire superstars and try to reach for that star. You know what I mean? And those were the people who I admired, and people who I still to this day, although Paul Rodriguez is a really good, really close friend of mine now, I still admire him the way I did when I was brand new in comedy. I respect him and I admire him the exact same way. Nothing's changed. As a matter of fact, probably admire him and respect him more because I know more of him than I did before. I know more of his struggles. I know, he recently had a heart attack and he's bouncing back and he's doing better than he's ever done. He's hungry. He's actually a better human being now than he used to be. So people can change and people can evolve, and change is good if it's a positive change, and so with him, I, love him more now than I used to. So and I try to be a better person. I'm trying to every day trying to evolve to be a better human being. And when you're a better human being, then you're a better father, you're a better boyfriend, you're a better husband, you're a better comedian, you're a better filmmaker, you're a better, whatever you're doing, you're better at it, because now you're the core of who you are as a human being is a better. So when you're better, that's always good.
I put up a little post on social media a little bit ago, and I brought up how you were on that DVD of the original Latin Kings of Comedy back in 2002, probably the biggest selling Latino comedy DVD of all time. What was that like, man, to be asked to just be on that stage with all those guys, great, Latino comedians? What was that like to be asked to be on that special?
It literally was my Rocky story. It was like some promoter telling me, all right, you're going to fight Apollo Creed for the title. I knew by being part of that, it was going to change my life. I knew it was going to put me in a different spotlight. And I also knew that I would have to rise to the occasion. And that's when I used my boxing mentality. And I did. At least at the time, I thought I rose to the occasion, right? And I did what I had to do. And I also knew afterwards I would have to rise to the occasion. People were going to go, why this guy? Why is he now one of the original Latin Kings of Comedy? And I knew I was going to have to step up my game, and I was going to have to start writing more, writing better, being better, and being a better person, and because now people are going to be looking at me. They're going to know, is this guy a jerk? This guy not a jerk? What kind of person is he? And so all those things came into play. And, and I think I got it. I think I rose to the occasion. I think I did that part successfully. But it changed my life. I went from making, mediocre money to a crap load of money. I went from doing little comedy clubs to theaters and casinos, and it changed everything. But I saw it coming. I knew it was going to happen, and I just braced myself, and I tried to humble myself and tried to get ready for it and tried to handle it the best way I could. A lot of people in this business and in sports, and they get a little bit of success and they become a-holes. They're jerks. They're cocky. They're arrogant. They think their crap doesn't stink. And that was the thing I was avoiding the most. I was like, I do not want to be that guy. I do not want to be that guy, because I didn't like those guys. And if anything, once that happened and once it was in theaters and everything, I was extremely ecstatic and I was happy. But I was probably more humble than I ever was in my life, because I knew how fortunate I was and how, the position I was in was a great position. And I was just extremely humbled by it.
Earlier, I asked you what was it like, when you made your pro debut in boxing. What was it like when you went on a comedy stage for the first time? Was it the same?
Yeah, except I probably didn't do as good in comedy. It's my first way around. It wasn't definitely a knockout. I probably did okay, but I was afraid, and I think I probably didn't sleep the night before the same way as my boxing, but it was, when I'm scared, I feel it, and I think I probably was scared, but I did it, and I got it over with. And, it was just something, it was just beautiful. I did a fantasy. To me, boxing was a fantasy. It was always a fantasy until I did it. Comedy was always a fantasy until I did it. And when I did it, I couldn't believe I did it. I was like, oh my God, I did it. I got on that stage and I told jokes, even though they probably sucked and people probably, gave me pity laughs, but I did it. And I was just happy. I was like, all right, good, I survived. But then trust me, plenty of times I was on stage where I prayed someone could throw the towel in and stop the show, because I was dying a horrible death. It was just like, it was just, imagine getting punch, and there's no referee to stop it.
Yeah.
And you just, like, the referee goes, no, sorry, you gotta, the fight's not over till the last bell rings. You're like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there are plenty of times in boxing I wish somebody would in comedy, that I wish somebody would throw in the towel.
I got a few random questions for you in both boxing and in the entertainment industry, and let me go ahead and throw the boxing ones at you first. Should championship fights go back to 15 rounds in your opinion, like they used to be? Why or why not?
I'm torn. That's a good question. Growing up, it was always 15 rounds. And I think 12 rounds is safer. If you make it 15 rounds, why not make it 20 rounds, right? It's so I think right now the way things are with 12 rounds, it sticks out that two more rounds past the 10. The highest limit in boxing now is 10, except for we fight for 12. And I think that's fine. I think that's fine. There's no reason to push it anymore. 15 rounds is great too, but it's funny because so many fights would change hands if it was a 12 rounds fights were 15 or if the 15 rounds were 12 rounds. The champions would be completely different, a lot of them. So I like 15 because I grew up with 15, but I'm okay with 12.
Should the boxing rules go back to having same day weigh-ins, or do you think it's better like this the day before so they can have a chance to recoup?
I think the day before is the best way to go, because if you know, like for instance, in my situation, if the person has to lose weight the day of the weigh-in, you got to let them recuperate a little bit. You have to let them recuperate. Now there's an argument to say, well, they can eat, yeah, but they both can eat. Both fighters can eat, and there'll be a fighter the next day that probably weighs 10 pounds heavier than the other fighter. But the point is, they both made the weight, and I think it's fair, and I think it's probably healthier if the weigh-ins were the day before.
A lot of people have gone over and switched over to watching like UFC and MMA and stuff like that. Because they say it's a lot more fair than boxing is. Boxing has bad decisions and this and that. What would you change in boxing to make it better and make people try to come back and to watch boxing? If it fell into your lap, what changes do you think you would make?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that boxing and MMA are it's like apple and oranges, man. It's completely two different things. Um, I'm not saying anything negative about MMA. I think it's a great sport. I think it's fun to watch. I think those guys are great athletes, and it's definitely entertaining, but completely opposite from boxing. Boxing is more of a science, more of a finesse, more of a chess game. I think it's, in my personal view, it's more beautiful. Now, what I would change I think there should be, I think a universal body that runs boxing. There should be one champion, as far as world champion. I think it's okay to have, a North American champion, a South American champion, this champion, that champion. That's okay, but there should be one world champion. It should be. I don't necessarily think it should be a governmental, a federal body, but there should be one body. And right now, it's not that way. It's all about promoters. Promoters, it's who's got this guy, who's got that guy. The promoters are calling the rules. They're doing all this. It's still run the way it was run in the 50s and the 40s. It's not that much better than it used to be. And I think that would help a lot. I think there's some shenanigans happening. I've never met a fighter who threw a fight. I'm sure in the history of boxing that's happened, but especially back in the day. But I don't think fighters throw fights. I don't think there's a mob guy going, all right, kid, stay down. I'll give you an extra couple of bucks. I don't think that happens. But I think other things happen. I think there's smoozing. I think there's maybe promoters being really friendly with judges. I think things like that happen probably. So I think if there was a governmental body, sort of, where it was just one official thing and that was also overseen and regulated, I think that would be better. I think it'd be better for boxing. I think we have better decisions. People who love boxing love boxing. I don't think they're going to go, well, I don't like some bad decisions. Unfortunately, that's the problem with boxing, right? And I don't watch a lot of MMA, but I'm sure maybe there's some bad decisions in MMA, because when you leave a decision to an individual or three individuals or five individuals, it's subjective. Some people like the slugger style, and even though the guy is he's getting hit with everything, and he's not landing punches, but he's moving forward, and to them, that guy's winning. Another guy may love, a guy who boxes and counter punches, and even though he may not be landing a lot of punches, he's not getting hit with a lot, and they're like, oh, this guy's winning. So I think there should be training for judges. There should be a standard for all judges, and go, look, this is the way it is. If, you do it by this way, you do it by this way, da 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 da. I think that would help a lot, having more of a uniform boxing situation.
Don King, a lot of people saw him as giving us great cards to watch on TV with a bunch of like great action. There's fighters that see him as a thief. How do you see him as a boxing person? Was he a good one or a bad one for boxing?
I think good things happen because of him, but it doesn't mean I personally think he was bad for boxing. I think he was a bad person. I think Don King thought about himself. He lied. He took advantage of a lot of boxers. He was a smart street guy. A lot of boxers aren't just, sharp, right? They're not that sharp. They're not that street sharp, or maybe they're street sharp, but they're not book smart. And they were being taken advantage of. And a lot of trainers, aren't smart trainers. They're street guys too. They're ex-fighters. They're just street guys. And fighters and street people, they just want to fight. They want to do their thing. They're not about business. They're not about this. So if all of a sudden you got some guy promising you something, hey, I'm going to give you money to buy a car for your mother. Oh, okay, great. But yet they don't know what that's costing them, right? That's costing them tons of money that they're never going to see. So I think he was a bad person. I think he did good things, but all the good things he did only benefited himself. So I think Don King was a bad person at the end of the day.
Random questions I have for the entertainment industry. Earlier you brought up about comedians being slapped on stage. What did you think of that whole Will Smith and Chris Rock thing?
I thought it was horrible, man. I thought it was, especially because, I love Will Smith. I still love Will Smith, but he screwed up. He was beloved. And first of all, as a comedian, I think Chris Rock didn't say anything that bad. Not at all. Really, he didn't. And as an entertainer, I thought to go on that stage and to do what you did, as far as Will Smith, was absolutely, completely taboo and wrong and shouldn't have been done. And I wish he would have apologized that night or in person or done more than just send a text the next day. But, and I thought Chris Rock handled it perfectly. And now he's a good guy, he could have done anything. I know if it would have been me, it would have been a different story. It would have been, or I would have been the bad guy because I knocked out Will Smith, but he handled it well, and he showed restraint. And I think it was more out of shock than anything, but he still showed restraint. And it was bad. Look, man, comedian is a comedian. If you don't like it, don't be there. I tell people in comedy clubs that I didn't come to your house to tell jokes. You came here, and if you came here, this is my house. And if you don't like it, you can leave. There's a door. I'm not going to kidnap you. You can leave. And that's just the truth. If I go to your house for dinner and we're having a conversation I don't like, and you're talking about politics, and you're talking about politics that I don't like, I'm not going to get mad at you. This is your house. I'm just going to ignore it or try to debate with you. And if it doesn't go well, I'll leave and I go, you know what, I got to go. But it's your home. You have the right to say whatever you want in your house. And a comedian, when he's on that stage, has the right to say whatever he wants. Now, it may suck. The guy may not be funny. The guy may be offensive. The guy may be the worst comedian on the face of this earth. But he still has a right to be there. And you don't have a right to hurt him or to, say anything else. And that's just life. That's the way life is. And people have to understand, just because you don't like a comedian, it doesn't mean he's wrong. It just means you're just trying to think your opinion is better than theirs. If there's 100 people in the comedy room, right, comedy show, and 99 are laughing and you're not, the problem is not the comedian. The problem is you. And people have to realize that. What, 99 people are wrong and you're the only one that's right? No, you have to look at yourself and go, okay, not my cup of tea, but everybody else likes it. And then move on. And that's it. Don't be a jerk. Don't be a Karen. Don't be a Will Smith. Just shut up and go home and get tickets to somebody else you may like.
What did the comedians think about this? Did they look at it like this is a green light for the public to go up there and hit a comedian if they get offended? Did you guys look at it like that or talk about it in that way when this incident happened?
Yeah, it was kind of like, what's happening with the world, man? What's happening with this whole cancel culture and this whole, everybody's too sensitive to hear words now, But that's it. But I don't think it really stopped many comics. It hasn't stopped me. I mean, I do my show the way I always do my show, and there are times where I do alter my show or I change show, but that's because either the audience is a particular type of audience, or because I've grown as an individual and I don't do certain jokes anymore, or but it's my choice, right? So it's like it's how I'm going to do it. It's like nobody's going to tell a boxer, look, man, you can throw jabs, but I don't want you to throw any hooks. I'm like, well, I can't do that. I got to throw hooks. That's what I want to throw a hook. I want to throw a hook. What do you mean I can't throw a hook? And so, telling a comedian they can't talk about this, can't talk about that, it's very, very taboo for us. We're like, no, I'm not going to listen to you.
I was a huge fan, and I don't know if you're gonna, hang up on me after saying this, but I used to be a pretty big fan of Carlos Mencia, who's considered by a lot of comedians. I know. Well, it's considered by a lot of comedians like you to be like a joke thief. Guilty or not guilty?
No, he is guilty of that, but I have no animosity towards him. He is what he is. He's done a lot in his career. He's accomplished a lot. In many respects, he's accomplished more than I have. He has tons of fans that still love him, right? So it is what it is. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't shoot a baby. He stole jokes, and he stole a lot of jokes probably. But it's none of my business. I'm not the joke police. I'm not the comedy police. I have no animosity towards him at all. I did a show probably about a month ago. He was on it. I said hi. He said hi. It was fine. I think he's gone through a lot in his life, especially after the whole Joe Rogan thing. And I think that, I'm sure, has affected him tremendously. And I'm sure his career has suffered because of that. And I don't wish him any harm. I don't know him in that way. So why would I wish him harm, right? So I hope he does well. I hope he puts food on the table. I hope he becomes a better human and becomes a better comedian. And, I wish him all the best.
Is it harder for you guys like to tell jokes and to come up with material because of all this, censorship and all people get offended really quick nowadays? Is it harder for you personally to write material because of this?
No, I don't think so. I think comedians have always thought to themselves, ooh, can I do this joke? Can I not do this joke? I think we've always done that. Now we probably maybe ask ourselves that more, but I don't think it stopped us at all. I did a joke about, and this is going to sound bad, but the joke isn't bad. One of my recent new jokes are about Down syndrome. So it's like, that's something. My response to that is it's not what you talk about, it's how you talk about it. And I think if you tell a joke, it's a touchy subject, but you do it with compassion, or you do it with empathy, or you do it from a personal perspective, it's a lot different than making fun of somebody with that condition. You know what I mean? So it just depends. I do a joke. There's a joke I do about cancer. Now, do I think cancer is funny? No, not at all. But there's things around that are funny, and sometimes we need to see the humor in things in order for us to swallow the pain or swallow the situation that we're in. I'll give you a small version of that. Is one day I was in Portugal doing a comedy tour, and I had comics with me that I brought, and I was there. We were in Europe for 18 days, and the second day, my phone falls in this cave thing in the ocean, and I lose my phone the second day. And I was pissed. I was furious. I don't remember the last time I was that angry. And I remember we get in the van, and the other two comics sitting in the back. I'm sitting in the front. Nobody's saying a word, man, because I'm furious. Nobody's saying a word. And all of a sudden, one of the comics, he shows me his phone, and there's a picture of fish in the ocean. He goes, "Hey, look, your phone just sent me this picture." And as angry as I was, I had to laugh my ass off because that was hilarious. And I was so angry, but I was like, I had to laugh because, trust me, there's nothing funny about my phone being without a phone for 2 weeks in another foreign country.
But you can see the comedy in it,
Yeah. And it was hilarious. And it broke the ice, and it made me laugh. I needed to laugh because I thought I was going to burst, in anger and fury. But that's so what I'm back to what I was saying. Trying to get back to what I was saying was that there's humor about everything, and it's just how you say it. Everything could be funny, but you just have to say it the right way in order for it to be funny.
And the movie industry, you're in that, and I'm going to ask about that in a little bit. But Latinos in the movie industry, is it getting better than what it was, let's say 20, 30 years ago? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it the same as it always has been?
I think it's getting better. I don't think it's getting where it should be by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that it's getting better because now, Latinos are playing lawyers and doctors and husbands and wives. And, Latinos are just being a Latino without having to be a Latino. I think that's a great progress because that's what life really is like. Not every Latin guy is a gardener or I don't know, a taco truck salesman or whatever. And I think that's changing. And I think one of the reasons it's changing is people like myself and other filmmakers are writing and producing and directing, shows and movies and short films that star Hispanic Latino actors who aren't playing Latino parts. They're just playing a man who's going through this or a woman who's doing that or, and I think once we go through that, I think then it changes. But I think the only way this is going to get better or catch up to where it should be is if more Latinos were behind the camera, more Latinos were greenlighting projects, more Latinos were producing, more Latinos were writing, more Latinos were directing. And I think if Latinos had more opportunities behind the camera, I think that would really expedite the progress for Latinos in front of the camera.
I've seen you've been posting a lot of accolades that you've been getting, awards you've been getting for a project that you did called Beautiful Violence. Actually, as much as I'm dying to look into it, I could probably just get online and look it up. But I keep saying I'm going to have Joey on. I'll just ask him directly about this. Beautiful Violence, a film you did. Tell us a little bit about not only what you did, but as far as what you work in behind the scenes of films or whatnot. Can you let us know a little bit about that?
Well, just rewind a little bit. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker ever since a little kid, but my passion to be a boxer was more. I went to school for television production right after high school. I've always dabbled in filmmaking in small ways. This last project I did, which is called Beautiful Violence, like you said, is a short film which I wrote kind of because of COVID. I was going to do another short film, but it had more actors and more locations. It was a bigger project. And when COVID happened and the quarantine happened, I had to, put that on the shelf. So I still wanted to shoot something. And I thought to myself, let me write something that has two actors and only one location. That way I can do it during quarantine. So I came up with a story, and it's about a white businessman who taunts a black drug dealer in order to get the black drug dealer to kill him for insurance purposes. And it's definitely a heavy little film, and it's a real good film, and it's emotional, and it has it's got a little light humor in it, but it's got a lot of darkness in it, and it's 89 awards later, obviously people like it. So I'm really fortunate and very blessed and grateful that people do like it. And there are people that don't like it. There's some people, because of the racial content that it contains, do not like the film. I get it. I respect it. I understand it. I'm just happy that as many people that do like it. And so I'm happy about that. I didn't make this film, to please everybody. I made this film to please me. And I wanted this film to be a good film. I wanted to tell a story that I wanted to tell. And I was hoping that people would like it. And just like any other filmmaker, any other athlete or comedian or actor or anything, I learn every project. I learn more. I learn, okay, I'm going to do this better next time. I'm going to do that better next time. And you learn more lessons, and you try to just do a better project and make the project better than the last one. Because the last one is doing really well. My last Beautiful Violence is doing really, really well. But I've already written 2 more projects, and I'm ready to shoot one. So and this one will be with Paul Rodriguez, and it's a film with Latin talent, but the film is not about Latin people. It just happens to have Latin actors in it, right? Latin characters in it. So, and I really expect this one to actually do better than Beautiful Violence. So, we'll see what happens. But I love being creative, man. Creativity has always been something I've always been attracted to, and I love writing and producing and directing.
The funniest thing, man, maybe earlier this year, late last year, we're talking about getting my kids into a sport, and my son was like, well, I'll take soccer, and my daughter was like, I don't feel like playing anything, but I wouldn't mind acting. And when you talking about Latinos in films and stuff, it kind of makes me think of what she said. For a young actress, let's say like my daughter would like to be an actress one day now,
Mhm.
what would you tell, like the future of Latino actresses or actors, or what words would you give them to motivate them or inspire them for, what the future, hopefully Latinos will see in the future in film?
Well, I would definitely say just dive in, go for it. Just go for it. It's not going to hurt you. If one day you decide, it's not for me, it's not for you, but it's not going to hurt. And it's, I would say read, as far as your daughter, I would read about acting, learn about acting, definitely take acting classes, and not just one. I would say, it's just like a boxer, right? You have a trainer, but you learn things from different trainers. And the same thing with acting. There's different styles of acting. There's different ways to act. There's acting where you're acting in drama. There's acting where you're acting on a play. There's acting where you're acting in a sitcom. All those three different actings or acting jobs are different, and you go about them differently. I would watch great actors perform. I would watch the performance. I would watch how they are. I would learn. I would immerse myself in acting. And, once you do that, and then, you try to find an agent, because that's the trick. You got to find an agent how old is your daughter, right?
She's going to be 10 next month.
Okay, so she's perfect. She's got that child age where that's very specific. So there's agents that deal with kids your daughter's age. Now she may play older. Depending on what she looks like, she may play older. She may play younger. She may play her age. But the beautiful thing about it, there's no bad side. There's no bad side if you handle it well. Don't be one of these acting parents who are like, you better do your lines. No, if she doesn't want to do it one day, go, okay, no problem. She's going to learn. She's going to learn confidence. She's going to learn individuality. She's going to learn a lot of things by being an actor that will help her in life, even if she decides never to act anymore. So there's no bad side. You know what I mean? There's only a bad side if you become one of those weird parents that, oh, you better do good. You're like forcing her to act and forcing her to do this or forcing her to do that. Then she's not going to want to do it. I mean, that's going to be a negative, right? So what you do is you work her, you work with her, you guide her, you support her, whatever she needs, you help her with it. And the day she goes, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. Go, okay, you don't have to do it anymore. And then all she will do is walk away with great experiences and great lessons.
How is it that you've been able to do both these very hard careers and still, like I said, getting better at an older age? And I'm not saying you're old, by the way, Joey. I'm not saying
no. You should see my nightstand. I got Bengay. I got Tums. My nightstand is saying that I'm old. But no. It's unlike sports. When you're in show business or you're an actor or comedian or singer or musician, you actually get better with time. We don't get worse. In sports, you get worse because your body doesn't perform the way it used to perform, right? So, because it's all your body. Now I'm using my mind, which is a little different. But I've had many, many ups and downs in my life. I've had lots of ups and lots of downs. I financially have done very well. Is my life as good as it used to be? No, not at all. By no stretch of the imagination. But it's also not as worse as it used to be. So all I can do is try to do best I can every day, better and better and better. And I truly, truly believe that I've been working not just on my comedy career or my filmmaking career. I've been working on me as a person. I've been working on Joey Medina. Because Joey Medina is not a director. He's not a comedian. He's not a boxer. Joey Medina is a human being. Joey Medina is a guy with many flaws. He's been through a lot of crap. I'm talking in third person on purpose, right? I've been through a lot of stuff. I'm a person just like anybody else. I get sick. I can die. I can, I feel. I'm sad. I'm happy. I'm just like anybody else. We're all the same. We just handle crap differently. That's all it is. The reason why I'm doing it because I don't know how to quit. Maybe this is my boxing. Maybe I was made this way anyway, but I don't know how to quit. I keep going. I keep doing better. I keep dreaming. I keep wanting to take the next step. I want to keep doing better. I want to be a better filmmaker. I want to be a better comedian. Trust me, I still fantasize about maybe having one more fight. At my age, I still fantasize about that. It probably won't happen, but there's no way in the world I'm going to tell myself no. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm like, if I decide one day I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. It may not turn out well for me, but if I want to do it, I'll do it. And that's okay. And that's the beauty of life, man. Just go for it. It's okay to fail. What's not okay is to fail by not trying. That's not okay. Because then you're always going to think to yourself, what if? I don't have to say what if. Now, do I have regrets in my life? Hell yeah. I can't even count how many regrets I have in my life. That if I can go back, I would change so many things. But it's life, right? You make mistakes. You lose. You make the bad call on things. You need to evolve as a human being. And I think that's the voyage I'm on now. It's just trying to evolve as a human being and be a better human being. And I think along with that comes being a better this, better that, and that's kind of what I'm going with.
How do you want to be remembered once it's all said and done, even though I know you're going to be around for another 100 years, but how do you want to be remembered to what I call the 3 big F's, your fans, your friends, your family? How do you want to be remembered to them?
First of all, I think I'm going to be remembered differently by different people. And that's okay. That's the path I've walked, right? But the bottom line, I want to be remembered as a good person. I might have done bad things in my life. I might have made a lot of mistakes, but in my core, I'm a good person. I would like people to think or to say he was a good comedian, he was a good boxer, he was a good filmmaker. I would love to say that, people to say that. But mostly those things aren't me. Those are things I've done, right? But I would like people to say he was a good person. He did this for me. He helped me with this. I saw him do this. He did that. He changed some people's lives for the better. And for the people I've hurt in my life, I just hope they forgive me. And if I can do it again, I would do it differently, and I'm trying to make better decisions every single day in my life. I'm just trying to make every day. I'm trying to, because as human beings, we have a crossroad every day in our life, and do we go left or do we go right? And I'm always trying to make the right decision. Sometimes I still make the wrong decision, but trying to make the right one many times as I can. I'm trying to get the right stuff in the win column. I'm trying to get the win column bigger than the lose column as far as life's concerned.
Well, champ, thank you very much for coming on. And the first time I saw the DVD of the original Latin Kings of Comedy, I remember saying, man, that guy was a pretty funny guy. And maybe about 5 years ago, I re-saw it, and then I didn't remember anyways that you were an ex-boxer. And I go, me having this podcast, one day I'm going to get that guy on there, and I'm going to be able to hopefully get in touch with him. And
your audience doesn't know we've been trying to do this for months.
Yeah, and it just hasn't happened until now, man. And it's the day before I'm going to go watch you actually perform live. But yeah, I mean, I finally got to talk to you. I finally got to bring you on. I finally understood, where your comedy comes from. That you have heart. That you've always had heart in everything you do. You put it in everything you do. You've done that since day one in boxing. You've done it, while doing comedy, and you're doing it now as a, film producer, director, or whatever you might do there. You wear every hat in the book, and I think you're going to continue being a success doing everything you're doing. You're obviously going to stay young for a long time, and you're going to continue doing what you're doing. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow perform. And man, best to you. I saw that you had COVID and you fought like hell to beat it, but you beat it. Another notch on your belt there of an opponent that you beat, and I'm glad you did. And you're still here with us.
It was a close fight, though. I tell you what, it was a close fight. I tell you that.
But you won by knockout, and that's all that matters at the end of the day, man. And again, thank you very much, and it was an honor to have you, Joey. And thank you for coming on to theboxingbar.com, and I appreciate it very much. And thank you for all the time you took to do this.
No, it was my pleasure, brother. Thank you, and I can't wait to actually chat with you tomorrow.